There is a kind of pain that few people know how to explain, but many deeply feel. It is the pain of being with someone and still feeling empty inside. It is not physical absence that hurts. It is emotional absence. It is looking to the side and realizing that even when accompanied, you are alone within yourself. At first, almost no one notices it. The emptiness does not arrive suddenly. It settles in slowly. First, you start swallowing small things. A comment that hurt you, but you pretend it didn't. An attitude that bothered you, but you stay silent to avoid conflict. Little by little, you learn that in order to keep the relationship standing, you need to shrink who you are. And this is the most dangerous point of any relationship. When loving someone requires abandoning yourself, you begin to edit your words, your feelings, your reactions. Not because you want to, but because you realize that being fully yourself creates distance, silence, or coldness on the other side. So you adapt, you adjust, you stay quiet. And every time you stay quiet, something inside you fades away. Emptiness is not born from being alone. It is born from the lack of authenticity. When you cannot express what you feel, when you do not feel safe showing your vulnerabilities, when your emotions seem exaggerated or inconvenient to the other person, you start living a relationship where there is presence, but no emotional shelter. And this kind of relationship is exhausting in a way your body feels. You can sleep next to someone and wake up tired. You can talk all day and still feel unheard. You can love deeply and still feel that something is missing. This emptiness does not mean you do not love. It means you are not being seen. Throughout this video, we will talk about how this emptiness is created, why so many people remain in relationships like this, and most importantly, how to recognize when love stopped being a place of safety and became a source of emotional exhaustion. If this beginning already describes something you are living or have lived, know this: you are not alone in this experience, even if you felt that way for a long time. Before continuing, subscribe to the Beyond Love channel so you don't miss the next parts of this content, and leave a comment. When did you realize that being with someone was making you feel empty? There is a quiet moment when you begin to realize that something is wrong. It doesn't come after a big fight. It doesn't arrive with a clear breakup. It appears in the details of everyday life, in the small feelings you start to ignore. You notice that you feel lighter when you are alone, more at peace when the other person is not around. And this creates guilt, because you were taught that loving means wanting to be together all the time. But the truth is that healthy relationships do not feel heavy. They do not drain your emotional energy. They do not make you need to recover after every encounter. When someone's mere presence exhausts you, it is a sign. When you feel relief, when you create distance, it is a warning. Because love should not require survival. Many people confuse intensity with depth. They believe that feeling strongly is the same as feeling safely. But there are intense relationships that drain, demand, pressure, and take, while offering very little space for you to exist as an individual. You start emotionally preparing yourself before seeing the person, choosing your words with excessive caution, predicting reactions, moods, silences. Without realizing it, you begin living in a state of emotional alert. This is not connection. It is constant tension. The emptiness grows because you are not emotionally resting in that relationship. You are always adjusting, always giving in, always trying to hold balance on your own. And when only one side carries the emotional weight, the relationship stops being a partnership and becomes emotional exhaustion. Often you stay because you remember how it was in the beginning, because you believe that version of the person still exists, or because you fear that leaving will mean admitting you lost too much time. But ignoring the emptiness does not make it disappear. It only deepens. And the more you try to convince yourself that it's not that bad, the further you drift from yourself. You start normalizing fatigue, confusion, silent sadness. until one day you realize you no longer recognize who you are. Being alone can be frightening, but being with someone and slowly feeling drained is even more dangerous, because this kind of pain does not scream, it consumes. There is a critical point in emotionally draining relationships when you realize you are slowly erasing yourself to avoid conflict, rejection, or distance. At first, the sacrifices are small. You stop expressing an opinion. You avoid talking about something that bothers you. You accept situations you once would not have accepted. You do this because you believe you are being mature, understanding, patient. But in reality, you are training yourself not to fully exist within that relationship. Little by little, you learn that certain parts of you are not welcome. Your sensitivity is seen as too much. Your needs are treated as demands. Your desire for dialogue is interpreted as a problem. So you begin adjusting yourself to fit. And when someone has to fit into a relationship, something is deeply wrong. The emptiness grows because you no longer recognize yourself in your own choices. You act to keep the peace, but lose yourself in the process. You smile while confused. You agree when you want a question. You stay silent when everything inside you is asking to be heard. This disappearance is quiet, but constant. You begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. Things that once brought you joy no longer have the same effect. Your self-esteem weakens because you are living in a relationship where being yourself seems insufficient. And the most dangerous part is that it happens slowly enough to feel normal. You start believing that the problem is you, that you ask for too much, that you feel too deeply, that you think too much. But love does not require you to shrink in order to be accepted. It does not demand self-erasure in exchange for affection. When a relationship pulls you away from who you are, it is not strengthening you. It is breaking you apart. And this emptiness you feel is not neediness. It is grief. Grief for the version of yourself that had to be left behind so the relationship could continue. Meanwhile, you keep trying, hoping that one day the other person will notice your effort. But relationships where only one person adapts do not find balance. They merely survive at the cost of the one who disappears. One of the hardest questions to answer is, if this relationship hurts, why are you still in it? The answer is almost never simple. It is not just about love. It is about fear, hope, and emotional attachment. Many people stay in empty relationships because they confuse presence with value. They believe that having someone beside them, even if emotionally distant, is better than facing the silence of their own company. The fear of being alone becomes greater than the discomfort of feeling empty while accompanied. There is also attachment to the early version of the relationship. You remember how it began, how things used to be, who that person once was, and you start living off memories, waiting for that past to return. But relationships do not survive on memories. They need presence in the present. Another powerful factor is emotional investment. You think about everything you built, everything you gave up, everything you endured. And leaving feels like defeat, as if ending it means admitting all that effort was wasted. So you try again, and again, and again. Meanwhile, the emptiness quietly grows. There is also guilt. Guilt for thinking about leaving. Guilt for feeling dissatisfied. Guilt for wanting something different. You begin believing that you should be grateful for what you have, even if it hurts you, as if wanting to be seen, heard, and emotionally held were asking too much. And in many cases, there is the hope that if you love enough, the other person will change. That if you are patient enough, everything will improve. That if you endure a little longer, the relationship will finally become what you imagined. But love is not proven by how much pain you can tolerate. It is not measured by how much of yourself you sacrifice. Staying in a relationship that empties you is not a sign of strength. Often, it is simply fear of facing your own solitude. And ironically, in trying not to be alone, you end up further from yourself than ever. There is a kind of loneliness that is not caused by the absence of people, but by the absence of connection. It is the loneliness that appears when you are with someone, talking, sharing moments, living life together, yet feeling that something essential is missing. This loneliness is confusing because from the outside everything seems normal. You are together. You may even laugh. You may share routines, plans, responsibilities. But inside, you feel like you are going through everything alone. You notice this loneliness in moments when you need emotional support and cannot find it. When something important happens and you hesitate before sharing because you already know you won't be understood. When you want to talk about your fears, pain, or insecurities, but choose to stay silent because you don't feel safe opening up. Over time, you learn to handle everything by yourself, even while being in a relationship, and this creates an invisible but deep distance. Accompanied loneliness hurts more because it contradicts expectations. You did not expect to feel this way while being with someone. You believed the relationship would be a place of exchange, support, and emotional safety. When that does not happen, you begin doubting yourself. You wonder if you are too sensitive, if you expect too much, if you ask for too much. But the desire to be emotionally seen is not an exaggeration. It is a human need. The problem is not wanting closeness. The problem is trying to find it in someone who cannot or does not want to offer it. This loneliness also shows up when your achievements are not celebrated, your pain is not validated, and your efforts go unnoticed. You feel like you could disappear for a few days and almost nothing would change. And this hurts in a quiet way, because there are no constant fights or dramatic breakups. There is only a continuous emptiness. Little by little, you begin to feel out of place within your own relationship, as if you are occupying space, but not truly belonging. This is one of the most emotionally painful experiences, being present, but not emotionally included. And this kind of loneliness, when prolonged, does not just make you sad, it makes you sick. Many people spend years trapped in empty relationships because they believe the problem is a lack of love. They think maybe they do not love enough, or that the other person's feelings have faded, or that time has simply worn everything down. But most of the time, the problem is not the absence of love. It is the absence of reciprocity. You love, you care, you make an effort. You try to understand, to talk, to adjust, to improve. But on the other side, the investment is minimal, inconsistent, or conditional. Affection appears when it is convenient. Attention shows up when the other person needs something. Care comes occasionally, never consistently. And this creates a deep imbalance. You start giving more than you receive, listening more than being heard, understanding more than being understood, being present more than you feel the other person is. Over time, this exhausts you. Not because loving is wrong, but because loving alone is tiring. Reciprocity is not only found in grand gestures, it lives in small daily actions, in genuine curiosity about how you are, in the effort to understand what you feel, in the willingness to be emotionally present, even when it is not easy. When this is missing, you begin to feel invisible. You notice that your pain does not create movement, that your words do not lead to change, that your boundaries are not respected. And still, you keep trying, believing that if you love a little more, the other person will notice. But love is not a test. It is not a constant demonstration of worthiness. Healthy relationships do not require someone to beg for attention, care, or consideration. They flow from mutual interest. When only one side carries the bond, emptiness grows because there is no real exchange. There is only one-sided effort. And this kind of relationship teaches a cruel lesson. You start associating love with exhaustion. But love should never be synonymous with emotional fatigue. When reciprocity exists, love strengthens. When it does not, it drains. Not every relationship that hurts is loud. Some have no shouting, No constant arguments, no obvious conflict. And yet, they leave deep marks. The signs that a relationship is draining you are often silent, subtle, and easy to ignore. That is exactly why so many people take so long to recognize them. One of the first signs is constant emotional fatigue. You cannot fully explain why, but you feel exhausted after interacting with that person. It is not physical tiredness. It is an inner weight, as if something has been taken from you. Another sign is the loss of enthusiasm. Things that once excited you no longer spark the same energy. You begin to feel unmotivated, apathetic, even disconnected from yourself. There is also the feeling of always walking on eggshells. You carefully measure your words, reactions, expressions. Not because you want to be considerate, but because you fear causing discomfort, distance, or silence. When a relationship demands constant emotional alertness, it stops being a safe space. Another important sign is the decline of your self-esteem. You begin to feel insufficient, like you are never enough, like you always need to change, improve, or try harder to deserve attention. You also start normalizing emptiness. You tell yourself that relationships are just like this, that nobody is perfect, that it's all in your head. But when you constantly have to convince yourself that everything is fine, something clearly isn't. You may also notice that your emotional state starts revolving around the other person's mood. Your day improves or worsens depending on their responses, tone, or availability. Without realizing it, you place your emotional balance in the hands of someone who does not protect it. These signs do not appear all at once. They accumulate, and the longer you ignore them, the further you drift from yourself. At this point, emptiness is no longer just a feeling. It becomes a state of being. Emotional emptiness does not stay limited to feelings. When it lasts too long, it begins to affect the mind and body in ways many people do not immediately connect to the relationship. You may start feeling anxiety for no apparent reason, a constant restlessness, as if something is always out of place. Your body remains on alert, even when there is no clear threat. Sleep changes. You sleep, but you do not rest. You wake up tired, feeling like your energy is never fully restored. The mind becomes a battleground. Repetitive thoughts appear. You replay conversations, reanalyze situations, try to understand where you went wrong, what you could have done differently, and often, you conclude that the problem is you. This kind of relationship feeds excessive self-criticism. You begin to pressure yourself more, question yourself more, doubt your own worth. The body responds to this emotional strain. Frequent headaches, muscle tension, loss of appetite or overeating, a tight feeling in the chest. None of this happens overnight. It is a silent accumulation. You try to live life normally, work, meet responsibilities, keep appearances. But inside, something is constantly heavy. The hardest part is realizing that you begin disconnecting from yourself in order to endure the relationship. You stop listening to your own signals, ignore exhaustion, minimize sadness, normalize pain, until the day your body speaks louder. Prolonged emotional emptiness is not just sadness. It is wear. It is overload. It is a state of emotional survival. And no relationship should put you in survival mode. When being with someone makes your mind and body sick, this is not healthy love. It is a clear sign that something needs to change. When you realize that being with someone has made you feel emptier than being alone, an internal conflict begins to take over. On one side, the fear of leaving. On the other, the fear of staying. Leaving means facing the unknown. It means dealing with real solitude, not accompanied loneliness. It means accepting that what you tried to hold on to may not have been what you needed. Staying, on the other hand, means continuing to drift away from yourself. It means accepting emptiness as routine. It means living a relationship where you are present, but not whole. And this is where many people become paralyzed. You start negotiating with yourself. You tell yourself you will wait a little longer, that things might improve, that maybe it is just a phase. But while you wait, time passes, and the emptiness deepens. The fear of leaving often comes with thoughts like, what if I regret it? What if I never find someone better? What if I end up alone forever? The fear of staying appears more quietly, but just as powerfully. What if I completely lose myself? What if I wake up years from now feeling the same emptiness? What if this is the life I accepted out of fear? These two fears face each other inside you every day, and neither of them is small. Many people stay not because they are happy, but because they are afraid. Afraid to start over, afraid to suffer, afraid to admit that something did not work. But continuing in a relationship that empties you is also a form of suffering, just slower and quieter. The fear of leaving hurts. The fear of staying corrodes. And at some point, you need to ask yourself, which of these fears is costing you more? There comes a moment when you must face a difficult truth. Staying in a relationship that empties you is not a sign of unconditional love. It is a sign of disconnection from yourself. For a long time, you may have believed that loving meant enduring, that maturity meant suffering in silence, that commitment meant staying even when it hurt. But no relationship should require you to lose yourself in order to survive. Choosing yourself does not mean you did not love the other person. It means you decided to stop abandoning yourself. Many people fear this choice because they were taught to place love above everything, even above their own emotional health. They were taught that leaving is failure, that giving up is weakness, that prioritizing yourself is selfishness. But there is a deep difference between giving up on someone and giving up on yourself. And when you stay in a relationship that drains you, it is yourself you are abandoning. Choosing yourself may mean leaving, but it can also mean setting boundaries, demanding reciprocity, stopping your silence, stopping your self-erasure. Not every choice requires immediate separation, but every true choice requires honesty with yourself. The emptiness you feel is not a flaw. It is a signal, an inner warning that something essential is missing. Ignoring that signal does not make you stronger. It only makes you suffer in silence. Healthy relationships do not take away your identity. They expand who you are. They do not make you smaller. They strengthen you. If being with someone makes you feel emptier than being alone, this is not healthy love. It is a painful invitation to look at yourself with courage. Perhaps the greatest act of love you can live right now is not insisting on someone else, but returning to yourself. Because when you choose yourself, emptiness begins to lose space. And for the first time in a long while, you can start to feel whole again.